He was seconds away from signing a deal worth hundreds of millions until his black maid said, "The house does not belong to your family."
Do not sign that renewal, Mr. Vale. The house does not belong to your family. The sentence stopped Adrian Vale's pen 1 inch above the final page. Outside the library windows, sleet struck the limestone mansion overlooking Lake Michigan. Inside, 20 executives waited for the 39-year-old head of Vale Holdings to extend a contract that controlled half the company's downtown properties. Adrian, a white Caucasian man with dark brown hair, gray eyes, and the measured stillness that had made rivals call him the quiet boss of Chicago, turned toward the woman standing beside the tea cart. Nia Brooks had worked at the Vale residence for 8 months. At 29, the African-American maid was known for her calm efficiency, neat black curls pinned into a low bun, and an ability to move through tense rooms without drawing attention. Tonight, she wore her usual charcoal housekeeping dress, white collar, black flats, and a silver watch that had belonged to her mother. Most guests remembered only the tray she carried, never the questions she asked herself about locked cabinets, revised inventories, and conversations that stopped when she entered. She had learned to notice omissions. In her gloved hand was a yellowed sheet of paper she had found beneath a loose drawer in the late founder's writing desk. Adrian dismissed the executives with a look. Only Victor Hale, the family attorney, remained seated. Victor was 60, silver-haired, polished, and openly irritated that a household employee had interrupted a transaction worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He demanded the paper. Nia did not move. The document is an original stewardship covenant dated October 14, 1987, she said. It states that the lakefront estate, the South Loop warehouses, and the voting shares attached to them must transfer to a public family trust if any Vale director uses those assets to conceal criminal income or deceive minority investors. Adrian's expression hardened. Vale Holdings had legitimate hotels, freight terminals, and construction firms, but everyone in Chicago knew the family's influence had been built through private pressure, secret favors, and contracts that never received public scrutiny. Adrian had spent 5 years trying to separate the lawful company from the shadow structure his late father had left behind. If the covenant was genuine, one exposure could dissolve his control before he completed the reform. Victor laughed and called it a discarded draft. Nia pointed to an embossed county seal, a handwritten registry number, and a notation naming a second copy held outside the family archive. Then she revealed the greater danger. The renewal Adrian was about to sign contained a clause certifying that no conflicting trust agreement existed. His signature would turn an old secret into a current false statement. Adrian closed the contract. "Where is the second copy?" Nia met his eyes. "I believe someone in this house has spent 39 years making sure no Vale ever finds it." Victor urged Adrian to call security and remove Nia from the room. Adrian did neither. He asked how a maid had recognized language that 3 corporate lawyers had overlooked. Nia removed her gloves and explained that she had completed 2 years of paralegal training before leaving school to care for her mother. After her mother died, unpaid medical bills forced her to take steady household work. She had never mentioned the training because the agency that placed her valued silence more than credentials. Adrian sent Victor home and locked the renewal in the library safe. He then offered Nia a temporary agreement. For 7 days, she would help him verify the covenant while continuing her regular duties, and he would pay her as a document consultant. Everything they found would be copied, logged, and reviewed by an independent attorney. Adrian also agreed that her household wages, housing, and references could not be threatened by anything she discovered. Nia read every line twice before she finally accepted, only after adding a clause that she could leave at any time and keep copies of any record bearing her name. Adrian signed without argument. Their first search began in the mansion's service archive, a narrow room behind the laundry corridor where old household ledgers had been stored by year. Nia had noticed that the founder's desk key appeared in a 1992 inventory, but vanished from every list after Victor became family counsel. Adrian found the omission trivial. Nia found it deliberate. They compared maintenance invoices, staff rosters, and renovation permits. 3 clues emerged. First, a locksmith had replaced the library drawer lock the morning after Adrian's grandfather died. Second, a courier invoice listed a sealed legal packet delivered to the Cook County Recorder's office, then redirected to a private records company. Third, an old payroll card showed that the witness to the covenant, Eleanor Vale, had received monthly consulting payments despite leaving Chicago in 1988. Eleanor was Adrian's estranged aunt. Family stories described her as unstable and resentful, a woman who had tried to challenge the company and failed. Adrian had not spoken to her since his father's funeral. Victor had always insisted that contact with her would invite scandal. Nia studied the payroll card. This does not look like support. It looks like silence purchased in installments. Adrian disliked the implication, but he could not dismiss the numbers. He gave Nia access to the company's archived vendor database. She discovered that the private records company had been acquired 12 years earlier by a holding firm represented by Victor Hale. At midnight, the mansion's lights reflected across the frozen lawn. Adrian brought Nia coffee instead of summoning her to serve it. She noticed the gesture, but said nothing. Then the vendor database locked them out. Someone had used Adrian's executive credentials from an office across town to erase the records company's acquisition file. The false login created the first consequence. By morning, Vale Holdings' compliance system flagged Adrian as the person who had deleted a protected vendor record. The company's audit committee scheduled an emergency meeting, and the bank financing the South Loop redevelopment paused a $200 million credit line. Victor arrived at the mansion with a prepared statement blaming a technical error and advising Adrian to sign it immediately. Nia read the statement from across the breakfast room. It described the missing file as routine duplication, even though no technician had examined the server. Adrian asked Victor who had drafted it so quickly. Victor replied that experience taught him to anticipate problems. Nia quietly placed the login report beside the statement. The erased file and Victor's draft shared the same unusual abbreviation for records management. Victor called it coincidence. Adrian refused to sign. The refusal protected him from another false declaration but deepened the financial freeze. Contractors demanded assurances, employees feared layoffs, and reporters gathered outside the company tower. A pension committee requested written proof that employee funds were not exposed, creating a deadline Adrian could not postpone. Adrian's board accused him of allowing a household employee to influence a public corporation. He responded that evidence mattered more than rank, but privately he questioned whether trusting Nia had made the crisis worse. Their disagreement surfaced that evening. Adrian wanted to access Eleanor's sealed personnel file through an old family authorization. Nia warned that the authorization had expired and using it could make any discovery legally useless. Adrian argued that the company had been built on decisive action. Nia answered that his family's habit of treating access as ownership was exactly why the covenant existed. The words struck harder than she intended. Adrian ordered her to leave the archive. Nia removed the consultant badge from her collar and placed it on the table. She reminded him that their agreement allowed her to walk away. For several minutes, neither moved. Then Adrian looked at the statement Victor had tried to make him sign. He apologized without qualification. He called the audit committee chair, disclosed the suspected credential theft, and requested an independent forensic review of his own account. The decision weakened his control in the short term, but it placed the server evidence under neutral preservation. Nia picked up the badge again. They pursued a lawful route to Eleanor. Public property records showed that she owned a small accounting office in Evanston. Attached to the deed was a storage unit address that matched the courier destination from 1987. Adrian called, but the number had been disconnected. Before they could leave, the independent forensic team sent an urgent result. The deletion had not originated from Adrian's office. It came through a remote access token issued 18 years earlier to the family council. Victor's name was not in the token field. The holder was listed only as steward. The word steward appeared nowhere in modern company policy, but Nia remembered it from the covenant. She returned to the founder's desk and examined the underside of the loose drawer. Faint pencil marks formed a sequence of dates: October 14th, 87, February 6th, 92, and June 18th, 08. The first was the covenant date. The second matched the locksmith invoice. The third was the day Adrian's father reorganized Vale Holdings after a federal tax inquiry. Adrian searched board minutes from June 2008. One resolution authorized Victor to create a confidential steward access token for legal continuity. Another transferred old family records to a facility later owned by Victor's client. The pattern showed that Victor had not merely known about the covenant. He had built administrative control around it. Still, suspicion was not proof. The original sheet in Nia's hand could have been planted, and the remote token could have been used by someone else. Nia insisted they verify each element before confronting anyone. Adrian, accustomed to commands being obeyed, found her caution frustrating and strangely reassuring. They drove to the Evanston storage address in Adrian's ordinary sedan rather than the black company car. The building manager would not open Eleanor's unit without her permission. Nia noticed a forwarding label on an old billing envelope visible behind the counter. She did not copy it secretly. She asked the manager to contact Eleanor and tell her that Adrian wished to discuss a document witnessed in 1987. They waited at a diner across the street, seated in a vinyl booth where no employee addressed Adrian by title. Nia ordered soup and paid for her own meal, refusing the unspoken assumption that every shared table created a debt. For the first time, they spoke about matters unrelated to the investigation. Adrian admitted that his father had trained him to treat affection as leverage and apologies as surrender. Nia said her mother had taught her that dignity was not silence. It was choosing when and how to speak. Adrian asked why she had risked her job in the library. Nia answered that she had watched too many powerful people sign papers they assumed no one else could understand. Eleanor arrived after sunset. She was 67, white, sharp-eyed, and carrying a canvas document case. She refused to enter Adrian's car, so they met in the storage office under a security camera. Eleanor confirmed that she had witnessed the covenant. Adrian's grandfather created it after discovering that company properties were being used to hide payments from investors and public officials. He intended the trust to protect employees and minority shareholders if the family continued. Eleanor opened her case. The second copy was gone. In its place was a recent inventory receipt signed by Victor Hale 3 days earlier. He had removed a sealed packet labeled Vale Stewardship Covenant and transferred it to the company's downtown legal archive. The renewal meeting was in 48 hours. Adrian wanted to suspend Victor immediately, but Nia persuaded him to wait until the document trail was preserved. If Victor was warned too soon, he could claim the packet had been moved under routine authority. Eleanor agreed to provide a sworn statement describing the 1987 signing, the monthly payments, and Victor's repeated warnings that challenging the family would ruin her reputation. That statement changed Adrian's understanding of his aunt. She had not abandoned the family. She had been isolated by a story repeated so often that he had mistaken it for fact. He apologized to Eleanor in the storage office. She did not forgive him immediately, but she agreed to help because the covenant was meant to outlast personal resentment. The three of them developed a careful plan. Eleanor insisted that no family member control the only copy of her statement, so it would be delivered simultaneously to 3 recipients. The independent forensic team would preserve the steward token logs. Eleanor would send her statement directly to the audit committee. Nia would review the downtown archive index to identify the exact box without accessing privileged legal material. Adrian would notify the board that the renewal vote required postponement because a conflicting ownership instrument might exist. The first act of trust came when Adrian handed Nia the only key to the private family archive. He did not stand behind her or demand constant reports. He told her to document everything and stop if any instruction felt improper. Nia accepted the key because the limits were clear. Inside the archive, she found no covenant. She found a destruction schedule prepared that morning. Box 87 SC 14 was listed for confidential disposal at 6 p.m., 2 hours before the audit committee planned to secure the room. The authorization line bore Adrian's digital signature. Nia photographed the schedule, called Adrian, and asked a question only he could answer. Where was his signing tablet? Adrian checked his office. It was missing. Victor had borrowed it after the frozen credit line meeting, claiming that a vendor consent required immediate review. Adrian ordered facilities staff to pause all document destruction under standard litigation hold procedures. He also surrendered his remaining signing devices to the forensic team. The decision prevented Victor from arguing that Adrian had tampered with the archive personally. At 5:42 p.m., Victor entered the disposal room with box 87 SC 14 on a cart. He found Nia waiting beside the locked shred bins, accompanied by the company's compliance officer and two neutral records custodians. Nia did not accuse him. She read the hold notice aloud and asked him to place the box on the evidence table. Victor smiled and complied. The box contained tax files, hotel leases, and an empty red folder bearing the covenant's registry number. A custodian checked the hallway camera. 12 minutes earlier, Victor had handed a sealed envelope to a private courier. The delivery address was not a law office. It was Adrian's mansion. The courier reached the mansion before Adrian did. By the time he and Nia arrived, the envelope had been placed in the library safe under an electronic receipt bearing Nia's employee code. Victor's strategy became clear. The covenant would be discovered in the maid's access area after she had publicly challenged him, allowing him to accuse her of theft, fabrication, and attempted extortion. Nia's face remained composed, but Adrian saw the cost beneath it and the anger she refused to let Victor define. Her employment record, paralegal education, and financial hardship could be rearranged into a convincing lie. Victor had chosen her because a black household worker would be easier for certain board members and reporters to discredit than a respected family attorney. Adrian asked the compliance officer to open the safe under camera. Inside was the sealed packet, the missing signing tablet, and a typed demand for $5 million written as though Nia had authored it. The packet's evidence seal had been cut. The covenant inside carried the correct 1987 language, but no original signatures. Victor called the board within minutes. He claimed Nia had manipulated a confused elderly woman, stolen privileged files, and pressured Adrian into delaying a profitable deal. Several directors demanded Nia's arrest and Adrian's temporary removal. The rift between Adrian and Nia came not from doubt about the evidence, but from his proposed response. He wanted to protect her by sending her to a company-owned apartment with private staff until the hearing. Nia heard confinement disguised as concern. She reminded him that his world solved risk by controlling people. Adrian realized he had repeated the very pattern he claimed to reject. He withdrew the offer and asked what she needed. Nia chose a hotel in her own name, legal counsel selected by her, and written confirmation that Vale Holdings would not restrict her movement or contact. Adrian agreed and paid the retainer without directing the lawyer. That night, Nia reviewed the photograph packet seal. The serial number belonged to a commercial evidence supplier, not the Cook County recorder. Victor had built a substitute packet, but he still needed to destroy or hide the true copy. Eleanor remembered that the original covenant had been notarized by a bank officer whose institution later merged into Great Lakes Mutual. Nia searched archived merger notices and discovered that Great Lakes Mutual maintained a microfilm repository for legacy trust documents. A reference number on the yellowed sheet matched the bank's old format. The second copy, in Eleanor's unit, had been a decoy. The legally certified version might still be held by the successor bank. They had one day before the public board hearing. Then Adrian received a message from Victor. Withdraw the inquiry, dismiss Nia, and the frozen credit line would be restored before morning. Attached was a draft press release declaring her a dishonest employee. Adrian forwarded the message to the audit committee instead. Adrian and Nia met at Great Lakes Mutual the next morning with separate attorneys, Eleanor and Marcus Reed, the bank's records director. Marcus was the only additional witness permitted in the repository. He verified the old reference number against a paper accession ledger created in 1989, 2 years before Victor's firm began representing the Vale family. The ledger showed that the bank held a certified microfilm image of the covenant and an accompanying notarized affidavit. Releasing it required either a court order or consent from the current trustee. The trustee named in the accession record was not Adrian, Eleanor, or any Vale executive. It was the Chicago Civic Stewardship Foundation, a dormant nonprofit created by Adrian's grandfather. Victor had allowed the foundation to lose active status, but he had never dissolved it. Nia located its original bylaws in the Illinois corporate database. When inactive, trustee authority passed temporarily to the oldest living witness of the founding instrument. That person was Eleanor. Eleanor signed the bank's release consent in front of Marcus and both attorneys. Marcus produced the microfilm, generated a certified image, and compared the notary seal with the bank's historical seal book. Every detail matched. The covenant was authentic. The accompanying affidavit added the missing motive. Adrian's grandfather had discovered that a group of executives, including Victor's father, were diverting family properties into private ventures and blaming the losses on lower-level employees. The covenant was designed to transfer control if future directors concealed misconduct. Victor had spent decades suppressing it because the trust's activation would expose his family's old gains and cancel his firm's lucrative control over Vale legal work. Nia found one more document on the reel, a schedule of protected beneficiaries. It included pension funds for hotel workers, warehouse employees, and domestic staff employed at the estate. Her mother's name was not there, but people in Nia's position had been considered by the founder, not merely used as invisible labor. Adrian asked Marcus to deliver certified copies directly to the court clerk, the audit committee, and the bank's regulatory council. He did not take the only copy. The chain of custody remained independent. On the drive to the public hearing, Adrian told Nia that the covenant could remove him as controlling director even if he had not created the original misconduct. Nia said truth did not become optional because honesty carried a price. Adrian agreed. He would disclose the covenant, accept the governance review, and let the evidence determine his role. At a red light, he thanked her for giving him a choice his family had always denied others. Nia answered, "I did not give you the choice. I only made it impossible to pretend you did not have one." When they reached Vale Tower, reporters filled the lobby. Victor stood at the hearing room doors, holding the false demand letter and smiling as though the outcome had already been purchased. The board hearing was broadcast to investors, employees, and the press because the frozen financing threatened hundreds of jobs. Victor spoke first. He presented Nia as a disgruntled maid who had discovered old family rumors and turned them into leverage. He displayed the unsigned covenant from the library safe, the false demand letter, and access logs showing her employee code. His story was simple, polished, and designed to make every true fact look suspicious. Nia did not interrupt once at all. When invited to testify, she described where she found the first sheet, why she warned Adrian before he signed the renewal, and how each record had been preserved. She admitted her debts and unfinished paralegal training before Victor could use them against her. Then her attorney introduced the safe video, the courier receipt, and the destruction schedule. The forensic team confirmed that Victor's steward token had erased the vendor record and copied Adrian's digital signature. Victor claimed his token had been compromised. Marcus Reed then took the witness chair. He authenticated the 1989 accession ledger, the historical seal book, and the certified bank image of the signed covenant. Eleanor testified that she had witnessed the agreement and received monthly payments after Victor threatened to brand her unstable. Her testimony was supported by payroll cards and bank deposits spanning 30 years. The final evidence came from Victor himself. Adrian played the message offering to restore the credit line if Nia was dismissed and the inquiry withdrawn. The bank financing officer confirmed that Victor had contacted him before the freeze and described the missing covenant as a temporary family leverage issue. Victor had created the pressure he later offered to remove. The room shifted. Directors who had demanded Nia's removal began asking Victor about conflicts of interest, evidence tampering, and false statements. He insisted that everything he had done protected the Vale name. Adrian stood. He said the Vale name did not deserve protection from the truth. He publicly accepted the covenant's authority, withdrew the property renewal, and requested immediate activation of the civic trust. He also resigned as board chair pending an independent review. The choice cost him control, but it denied Victor the chaos he needed. The audit committee terminated Victor's firm and referred the records to state authorities and the court. No dramatic arrest interrupted the hearing. Victor's defeat was quieter and more complete. His access was revoked, his statements were preserved, and the documents he had manipulated now formed a verifiable record against him. The trust's activation transferred the disputed properties and voting shares out of direct family control. Adrian's empire did not vanish in one sensational moment. It became accountable to trustees, employee beneficiaries, and public reporting rules. As the hearing ended, reporters shouted questions at Nia. Adrian did not answer for her. He stepped aside and let her choose whether to speak. She approached the microphones. Nia told the reporters that the story was not about a maid destroying a family empire. It was about records proving that no empire should depend on silence. She credited Eleanor, Marcus, the forensic team, and the employees whose pension rights had been hidden inside the covenant. When asked whether Adrian had manipulated her, she said he had made serious mistakes, corrected some of them, and accepted consequences that power usually tried to avoid. Over the next 6 months, the court confirmed the covenant and supervised the transfer. Victor Hale lost his law license while civil and criminal investigations examined evidence tampering, unauthorized system access, and false corporate statements. His firm paid a substantial settlement to Vale Holdings and the Employee Trust. The frozen credit line was replaced by a smaller, transparent financing package after independent auditors verified the company's lawful revenue. Adrian did not return as controlling chair. He remained chief executive under a board that included employee and community trustees. He sold 2 private properties to fund pension shortfalls and ended several consulting agreements tied to family influence. The changes reduced profits at first, but they stabilized contracts, protected jobs, and restored the company's reputation through documented accountability rather than public relations promises. Eleanor became a trustee and reopened contact with her nephew on careful terms. Their relationship did not repair itself through one apology. It grew through regular meetings, shared records, and Adrian's willingness to hear what his family had refused to hear. Nia resigned from domestic service. The trust paid her consulting fees but offered no special ownership stake, a safeguard she requested to avoid any claim that she had acted for personal gain. She completed her paralegal certificate and joined the trust as an independent records and ethics coordinator after an open hiring process. Her first policy required every household and contract worker to receive written grievance rights. Adrian and Nia kept professional distance throughout the investigation. Months later, after her employment had moved outside his authority and both had separate counsel confirmed there was no reporting conflict, he invited her to dinner. He did not send a car or reserve a private room. He asked in person at the public cafe beneath Vale Tower and made clear that refusal would change nothing. Nia considered him for a long moment. "One dinner," she said. "No contracts." Their relationship developed slowly, through ordinary choices rather than debt, secrecy, or obligation. Adrian learned to offer care without control. Nia learned that accepting care did not surrender independence. A year after the hearing, they stood together in the restored library as the Civic Trust opened the mansion's archives to researchers and employees. The founder's desk remained by the window. Beneath its repaired drawer, the pencil dates were preserved behind glass. Adrian asked whether Nia believed the covenant had destroyed his family empire. She looked at the employees entering the room, then at the man who had chosen accountability over possession. "No," she said. "It destroyed the lie that holding power meant owning everyone beneath it." He offered his hand. She took it freely.
Subscribe for more cinematic stories where hidden evidence, difficult choices, and earned trust change powerful lives.